Jealousy doesn't always look like anger. It doesn't always show up as insults or public takedowns or obvious hostility. Sometimes it hides behind a smile, behind concern, behind questions that sound completely harmless, but leave you feeling exposed. You share good news, a promotion, a new relationship, a personal achievement, something you worked hard for. And instead of celebrating with you, someone pauses. They tilt their head slightly, and they ask a question. A question that sounds innocent, curious, maybe even supportive. But something feels off. You can't quite name it in the moment. But after the conversation ends, you notice something strange. You feel smaller, like you need to explain yourself, justify your choices, defend your success. And that's exactly what they wanted. Because jealous people don't attack you directly. They don't need to. They use questions. Specific questions designed to plant doubt, minimize your achievements, or make you feel guilty for having what they want. And if you don't recognize these questions for what they are, you'll walk straight into the trap every single time. Today, we're breaking down the 5 questions jealous people always ask, what they really mean underneath the surface, and how to protect yourself from the psychological game they're playing. Let's get into it. Here's what most people don't understand about jealousy. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious. It doesn't always announce itself. The most dangerous form of jealousy operates quietly, through subtle manipulation. Through questions that bypass your conscious defenses and target your subconscious mind directly. Psychologists call this covert social sabotage. It's a form of indirect aggression where the person isn't overtly hostile. They're not yelling at you. They're not criticizing you openly in front of others. Instead, they're asking questions. Questions that force you to second-guess yourself. Questions that make you question your own reality. And here's why questions are so psychologically effective. They bypass your logical defenses. When someone makes a direct statement, you can disagree, you can defend yourself, you can push back. But when someone asks a question, your brain automatically starts searching for an answer. You engage with the premise, you explain yourself, you justify your choices. And in that moment, you've already lost control of the conversation. Because jealousy isn't actually about hating you, it's about comparison, it's about internal ranking. The jealous person sees your success, your happiness, your forward movement, and it forces them to confront their own stagnation. And instead of dealing with that discomfort internally, they project it outward onto you. They don't tear you down directly, they make you tear yourself down. They plant seeds of doubt. They reframe your success as luck or timing. They make you feel guilty for simply moving forward with your life. And the worst part? They do it in a way that makes you feel like you're overreacting if you call it out. Because on the surface, they're just asking questions, just being curious, just expressing concern. So let's decode exactly how this works. Let's break down the 5 questions jealous people always ask, and more importantly, what they're really trying to accomplish when they ask them. You buy something new, a car, a house, new furniture, maybe just something nice for yourself that you've wanted for a while. You're excited, you worked hard for it, you saved money, you made sacrifices, you planned carefully. And then someone looks at your purchase and asks, how did you afford that? On the surface, it sounds like a completely neutral question, maybe even admiration, maybe they're genuinely curious. But pay attention to the tone, the energy behind the words, the way they're looking at you when they say it. Because what they're really asking underneath is, how do you have something I don't have? This question is psychologically designed to do 2 things simultaneously. First, it implies that you shouldn't be able to afford it, that there's something suspicious, unusual, or questionable about your ability to have this thing. Second, it forces you into a defensive position where you have to explain yourself, justify your purchase, prove that you earned it legitimately. And here's the trap. The moment you start explaining your finances, you've accepted their premise. You've agreed that your spending needs external justification, that your choices are up for public debate and scrutiny. And now you're defending yourself for something you have every right to do without anyone's permission or approval. What the jealous person is really feeling underneath: inadequacy. Your ability to afford something they can't makes them feel behind in life, left out, unsuccessful by comparison. So instead of celebrating with you or asking themselves what they could do differently, they question you. They make you feel like you need to prove you deserve what you have. A real supporter, someone who genuinely cares about you, would say something like, "That's amazing. You've worked so hard for this. I'm so happy for you." A jealous person makes you feel guilty for simply having it. So how do you respond to this question? Don't explain your financial situation. Don't justify your purchase. Don't break down your budget to prove anything to anyone. Simply say, "I worked hard for it," or even just, "I'm really happy with it." Then move on. Change the subject. End the conversation if you need to. You're not being rude. You're not being defensive. You're refusing to play a psychological game that was specifically designed to make you feel small. You're making a big decision in your life. Starting a business, moving to a new city, changing careers, ending a relationship, taking a risk that matters to you. You're nervous about it, but also excited. You've thought it through carefully. You've weighed the pros and cons. You're as ready as you'll ever be. And then someone who hasn't taken a risk in years looks at you and says, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" This question sounds like genuine concern, like they care about your well-being, like they're protecting you from making a potentially costly mistake. But here's what's really happening psychologically. They're projecting their own fear directly onto you. People who are stuck in their lives absolutely hate watching other people move forward, because your movement forces them to confront their own stillness. Your courage highlights their fear. Your willingness to risk highlights their unwillingness. So instead of saying, "I'm scared to take risks in my own life," they reframe it as, "You should be scared too." This psychological mechanism is called projected anxiety. They're uncomfortable with your growth and forward momentum, so they attempt to infect you with their doubt. They make you question whether you're truly ready, whether you've actually thought it through enough, whether you're about to make a terrible mistake. And if you're already feeling nervous about the decision, which is completely normal, this question lands especially hard. Suddenly, you're not excited anymore. You're second-guessing yourself. You're listing all the possible ways it could go wrong. And just like that, their fear becomes your internal ceiling. What they're really feeling underneath? Envy, mixed with deep self-doubt. They wish they had your courage. They wish they could take the leap you're taking. But instead of finding that courage within themselves, they try to take it away from you. A real supporter would say something like, "That's a big step. I'm really proud of you for going for it. How can I support you?" A jealous person plants seeds of doubt and calls it concern for your well-being. How to respond to this question? I've thought about it carefully, and I'm confident in my decision. You don't owe them a detailed breakdown of your entire thought process. You don't need to convince them it's the right move for your life. You just need to protect your own clarity and conviction from their projected fear. This one's more direct, more openly aggressive, but it still comes disguised as a question rather than a direct attack. You're stepping into a new version of yourself, speaking up in situations where you used to stay quiet, setting boundaries you never set before, claiming space you never claimed before. And someone looks at you with narrowed eyes and says, "Who do you think you are?" Sometimes it's phrased in slightly different ways. "Since when do you act like this? You've really changed, haven't you? You think you're better than everyone now?" But the core message is always the same. Stay in your assigned place. This question is psychologically designed to shame you for personal growth, because growth is inherently threatening to people who haven't grown themselves. When you evolve as a person, you create distance. You stop fitting neatly into the version of you they were comfortable with. And instead of celebrating your transformation, they punish you for it. This psychological tactic is called social leveling. They're actively trying to pull you back down to where you used to be, where they still are. Because if you rise too far above them, the gap between you becomes impossible to ignore or explain away. And here's the emotional trap. If you're someone who deeply cares about being liked by others, this question will make you want to shrink immediately. You'll apologize for changing. You'll downplay your growth. You'll dim your light to make them feel comfortable. What they're really feeling underneath? Insecurity and fear of abandonment. Your growth reminds them painfully that they're standing still, and instead of dealing with that uncomfortable reality, they try to make you feel guilty for moving forward. A real friend says something like, "I love seeing you step into yourself like this. This version of you is incredible." A jealous person makes you feel like confidence is the same thing as arrogance. How to respond to this question? I'm becoming who I've always wanted to be. Or simply, I'm just being myself. You don't need their permission to grow, and you definitely don't need to shrink yourself back down to fit into their comfort zone. You're celebrating something meaningful in your life, expressing genuine excitement, sharing your joy openly and authentically, and someone looks at you and says, with a slight edge in their voice, "Isn't that a bit too much?" Maybe you posted about your achievement on social media. Maybe you're dressed up nicely for an important event. Maybe you're just visibly, undeniably happy about something, and they make you feel like you're overdoing it somehow, like you're being extra, like you're showing off, like you're making too big a deal out of something. This question is psychologically designed to make you feel guilty for being visible, for taking up space, for not hiding your success in a corner where nobody has to see it. Because jealous people need you to stay small in every possible way. Not just in actual reality, but in visibility and expression as well. If you succeed quietly in private, they can ignore it or pretend it didn't happen. But if you celebrate openly and publicly, they have to directly face it. And facing your success means facing their own noticeable lack of it. So they shame you for your enthusiasm. They make joy seem like bragging. They make happiness seem like performance. And if you internalize this message, you'll start hiding your wins, downplaying your achievements, apologizing for simply being happy. This psychological tactic is called modesty policing. They're using the social pressure of false humility to keep you from shining too brightly. What they're really feeling underneath? Bitterness and constant comparison. Your visibility makes their invisibility more painfully obvious. And instead of stepping into their own light and creating their own success, they try to dim yours. A real supporter says something like, "You absolutely deserve to celebrate this. I'm so genuinely happy for you." A jealous person makes you feel like your happiness is somehow performative or inappropriate. How to respond to this question? I'm proud of this and I'm going to fully enjoy it. Or simply, I'm happy. You don't need to justify your joy to anyone. You don't need to shrink your celebration to make someone else feel more comfortable with their own lack of celebration. You accomplish something significant and meaningful. Complete a difficult project. Create something impressive. Achieve a personal goal that took real effort. And instead of acknowledging your effort and ability, someone immediately asks, "Did someone help you with that?" On the surface, this sounds like a completely neutral question. Maybe even a compliment about the quality of your work. But here's what they're really doing underneath: erasing your personal agency. This psychological tactic is called attribution sabotage. They're deliberately reframing your success as primarily the result of someone else's contribution, not your own capability and effort. And when your achievement isn't really yours anymore, it completely stops being threatening to them. If you got help from others, then it wasn't really you who did it. It was luck. It was connections. It was someone else doing all the hard parts. And suddenly, they don't have to feel inferior by comparison, because you didn't really do it alone anyway. The psychological trap here is this: if you say yes and acknowledge help, they'll mentally credit someone else entirely. If you say no, they'll act like you're being defensive or arrogant about your abilities. Either way, they've successfully planted doubt in the conversation. What they're really feeling underneath: inadequacy masked as skepticism. They genuinely can't believe you're capable of this level of achievement on your own, because it forces them to ask themselves why they haven't done something similar. A real supporter asks something like, "This is incredible. How did you do this? I'd love to hear about your process." A jealous person systematically removes you from your own success story. How to respond to this question: "I worked really hard on this, and I'm proud of it." You can absolutely acknowledge collaboration and support without erasing yourself from the equation. You can be genuinely grateful for help without giving away all the credit for your own sustained effort. So here's the overarching psychological pattern you need to recognize. Jealous people don't attack you directly and openly. They don't need to use that approach. They use carefully crafted questions instead. Questions that sound innocent on the surface, but carry a hidden agenda underneath. And the goal is always exactly the same: make you doubt yourself, make you feel smaller, make you question whether you actually deserve what you have. Because your visible success forces them to directly confront their own stagnation. Your confidence highlights their deep insecurity. Your forward growth makes their stillness unbearable to sit with. But here's what you absolutely need to understand at a core level. Their jealousy is not a verdict on you or your worth. It's simply data about them and where they currently are in their own journey. It tells you clearly where they are emotionally, what they're struggling with internally, what they're afraid to face about themselves. And once you see this dynamic clearly for what it is, it loses its psychological power over you. Because you're no longer unconsciously engaging with the surface question, you're consciously seeing the insecure person behind it. And when you see them clearly, you naturally stop shrinking yourself to make them feel comfortable. So the next time someone asks you one of these psychologically loaded questions, don't get defensive. Don't over-explain yourself. Don't apologize for your success or happiness. Just calmly recognize the game being played. Set a clear boundary and keep moving confidently forward. Because the people who are truly happy for you and your success don't need to question whether you deserve what you've built. They already know you do, and they celebrate it with you. If this video resonated with you on any level, drop a comment below. Let me know which of these questions you've personally heard before. And if you want more psychology breakdowns exactly like this, make sure to hit subscribe. We talk about the hidden psychological dynamics in everyday interactions that most people never consciously notice. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.